Once our nightmare from the past few years finally ended and we were back in our home, it was time to really make it our own. We were in the process of moving abroad when the pandemic hit, and it left our family stuck on 2 different continents, thanks to immigration restrictions. Since we don't get a chance to live abroad together at this point in life, we decided to make our house a place we love instead of just a place we have to live. The next project on that list? Building a DIY bookshelf with built-in cabinets for our dining room. The dining room in our house used to be the living room. After a remodel, the living room moved to the converted garage, and we were left with a large but oddly shaped dining room. We had a china cabinet on the wall, and I hated how much wasted space there was here. Our house is less than 1,500 square feet, so we really have to maximize every inch. There was also virtually no storage here. We were able to solve both these problems with our new DIY bookshelf with 6 built-in cabinets. I started by building a base for the cabinets. I used upper cabinets because they're more narrow, but because they don't have a toe kick like lower cabinets do, I actually had to build a base for them so they weren't just sitting on the floor. I started by measuring the bottom of the stock cabinets we were using, then built a 2x4 frame for them to sit on. I used 3-inch Power Pro screws because they don't require pre-drilling. No one will see these, so I didn't really bother with pocket holes. After these get installed, we'll add trim to finish out these built-in cabinets. I actually did most of this project myself, but it's obviously easier to move them in place if you have some help. Once I got the cabinets in place, I measured and marked where all the wall studs are. This will make it easier later when we need to attach into the studs for both the bottom and top sections. You could start with removing the baseboards, but we actually forgot. You'll want to do this carefully so you can try to reuse them. We used a crowbar and a hammer to remove ours and got a little carried away and made a big hole in the drywall, so try not to make more work for yourself by taking your time. Now it was time to work on the countertop. We found a beautiful butcher block countertop for our DIY bookshelf wall. For a cheaper option, you could always use plywood with edge banding. Once you have your measurements, just cut down the countertop. We used a circular saw with the Craig Rip Cut. I'll link these for you below if you don't have a table saw. We actually do have one, but this countertop is really heavy and it was much easier to work with on the ground. Next, go ahead and precondition and stain your countertop. This was easier to do outside in the garage. Once your countertop is ready, just glue it in place after the cabinets are mounted. To attach the cabinets to the wall, align the first cabinet to a stud. Using a 3-inch screw, drill to attach it into that stud. Now align the second cabinet to the first one and attach them together. You just shove them close together and use a clamp to hold them flush and up against the wall. Drill an 1/8-inch pilot hole in the face frame on the cabinet and use a 2-inch screw to attach these 2 cabinets together. Then you just continue on, attaching into the wall and attaching them together. We did 3 cabinets, but you may do more. Before moving on to the next step, I put down a drop cloth. Of course, my dog always thinks this means it's time to play. I've actually got a video about getting our little buddy home from China if you're interested. I'll link it for you. Before building the top of the bookshelf, I went ahead and put the polyacrylic to protect our butcher block. I did this project over several weeks, several months really, so just do these steps in whatever order works best for you. I had to wait to get help on the top section, so I went ahead and painted the cabinets next. I didn't bother priming this section, but I ended up using like 3 coats of paint, so I definitely recommend a primer. The doors look much better if you use a sprayer, but I used a roller and they actually turned out beautifully. This paint dries really nicely. When it was time to cut the boards for the top section, I used my miter saw since I'm not quite comfy using the table saw. This meant I had to make 2 cuts to get all the way across, but hey, it worked. It also shows you don't need a bunch of tools for this project. A miter saw worked just fine. The 2 vertical boards go all the way to the ceiling, whereas our middle vertical boards did not. This was because we added electrical, and it was much easier than drilling holes. All of our boards on the top section were 1x12s. Cut the 1x12s and double check that they fit. Remember, your ceiling is not going to be perfectly level all the way across. Next, drill pocket holes into one side of each of the boards. This is how you attach it into the countertop. We use this little laser level to help us line up the side boards. You want to find where to attach the braces for each of the vertical boards. Remember, you marked those studs earlier. I started by putting my side vertical board in place and lining it up. You'll attach the vertical boards directly into the braces and into the countertop via the pocket holes. For the braces, we just used scrap 2x4s and made sure they were long enough to attach into a stud in at least one place. You then attach the vertical boards directly into the braces and into the countertop. I was pretty proud of how straight we got our shelves despite less than perfect ceiling and walls. The thing to remember is caulking is going to fill any gaps or spaces you have, so just do your best. Now we're going to finish out the front of our DIY bookcase. Starting at the top, measure across and cut your 1x12 to fit all the way across the top of the shelves. Use countersink screws here and an extra set of hands to get everything screwed in place. There are probably many ways to do shelf pin holes, but I used the Craig shelf pin jig. The jig is set up to evenly space your holes quickly and easily. The kit comes with a drill bit that fits perfectly in the jig and makes the holes. It also has a pin that helps you line up when it's time to move up to the next set of holes. I started drilling all the holes, but quickly realized I wasn't going to be moving my shelf that much, so I only added a few at different heights. Normally you'd wait till the end of a project before filling in your holes and imperfections, but because the trim will be in the way where the pocket holes are, I figured it'd be easier to go ahead and take care of those now. I started by plugging the pocket holes with pocket hole plugs and then sawing flat with a flush cut saw. This was terrible. I tried everything and couldn't keep from gouging the wood, so going forward, I just used wood filler and sanded it flat, and it was so much easier. Next up is the shelves. I cut them the same as the vertical boards. They're also 1x12s, just cut to length for each shelf. With the shelf boards in place, you can now measure, cut, and install the vertical trim. These will center on the 2 center vertical boards and go flush to the sides on the vertical boards on either side of your bookshelf. Just use a finish nailer to attach these. I had one little booger that didn't go in all the way, so I did have to use a nail setter to get it in. If you don't know what that is, I'll link it for you. It's one of those random tools you've never heard of, but comes in really handy. By doing the vertical trim first, then adding the horizontal trim to the shelves, they're adjustable. We've already filled our pocket holes, but you'll have plenty of nail holes to fill in. Allow the filler to dry, then go back and sand it smooth. Now it's time to prime the bookshelf. The raw wood on the top definitely needed priming. I used this Zinsser bin primer because it's awesome. It's especially good at covering wood knots and those dark places in the wood that can sometimes bleed through your paint. I've linked it for you below. I also had to buy a 1/4 inch plywood panel to add on the sides of our cabinet because mine weren't finished. So I cut and glued these on the sides before I started painting the bookcase. The paint we used dried super fast and leveled and didn't leave brush marks. It also cured to a nice hard finish. I'll link this paint for you in the video description. Okay, do not skip this next step. This is what's going to give your DIY bookshelf a beautiful built-in look. It makes it look professional and finished. With the shelves removed, caulk all the way around, up and down, anywhere your DIY bookshelf meets the walls and ceiling. I also caulked around where the vertical boards meet the countertop. Lastly, make sure you caulk around your newly reinstalled baseboards. This will make a huge difference, and it looks amazing. I was so happy to finally tackle this project for our home. While it seems like a lot of work, if you break it down, most of it is actually really simple. There aren't any complicated cuts, and there's a lot of room for error. This project could also be really easily customized for your home. Make it bigger or smaller, whatever you need. The shelves are really easy to build, but you could use pre-made shelves in addition to the pre-made cabinets if you wanted. The best part was getting to decorate. I've been collecting rainbow books for the past few years, and I finally got to display my collection. We had about 60% of these books already, but to get the rest of the colors, I checked every time I went to a thrift store or to the Dollar Tree. I actually found several hardbacks with solid bright covers for only $1. The rest of the decorations were sourced from all around our house. The colorful boxes are a memory box project I did for Joanne a few years ago. I'll link it for you below. Many of the items are things we've picked up on vacations around the world. These dominoes are from Mexico. My father-in-law makes these beautiful wood bowls. We have them all over our house. I love this candle of one of my heroes, the late Justice Ginsburg. This cup and notepad we found in China. I bought this wooden postcard on our second trip to Alaska. We found this little guy in New Orleans. We got this beautiful print on our first anniversary trip when we went to Rockport, Massachusetts. Eric collects tiny elephants, and this one is either from South Africa or Thailand. I found this colorful doll last year in South Africa. I hope this project inspires you to build your own DIY bookcase with built-in cabinets. If you have questions, just drop me a comment below. I'm happy to help. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video.